number of different application areas of the central nervous system. So number one is real-time measurement of the state of the world. So wouldn't it be great if we knew more about what's going on in our society? The other thing is use this information to create larger knowledge about the chances and the risks in our world. And number three, use this information also to create new science to understand our complex global system better and to basically create global system science. Number four, create self-organizing systems by creating real-time feedbacks, and finally, support collective intelligence. I'm now going to illustrate this one by one with some examples. Does anybody else want to give this talk? Measuring the world in real time. So, my team of young students who has been working on creating NervousNet as the central nervous system has been joining the conference in Hamburg, organized by the Chaos Computer Club, and of course these people are particularly sensitive about privacy, but nevertheless we found a way to do some measurements that would not be privacy invasive. So what we've done is the following. We have created so-called beacons, which are much smaller than actually a key. And these beacons will be produced in the following way. They consist of three elements, which is a battery, a microchip, and a cover, which is produced by a 3D printer. Of course, we wanted to be kind of doing everything by ourselves as much as that can be done. And then basically, these objects were distributed in an anonymized way, and they were given to many people who were willing to carry them around with them. So intentionally, we have not used GPS sensors in order to track people, which we could have done with this app. But we have kind of blocked the sensor because it's particularly privacy invasive. Instead, we were interested in actually detecting proximity only, not location, right? So how close are people with each other? And that's actually enough for the purpose that we were interested in, which was basically study social networks and how they change in time without even knowing who was who. Well, as you can see over here, obviously the social network is changing in time, and we can get an idea of the social dynamic that is going on in such a conference over there. But of course we can do other things, and for example we can do distance measurements. We could build a smartphone-based radar system, or we could use actually the microphone, which we have by the way degraded in order not to record what we're saying, but just to record the noise level. This system can be used for noise mapping. So if just enough people would download this NervousNet app and turn on the sensors, then we could actually measure the noise distribution in a city or in an entire country or in the entire world, given enough people participate in this. We could also measure luminosity and many other things. So, of course, the idea is that in perspective we would be able to measure other things too, such as environmental change and who causes it, or to map resources and who uses them, or even map our globe in 3D, as you can see over here. And actually that's not as difficult as you would think, because people are uploading photographs all the time to the web. And over here, Flickr photographs have been taken by a colleague and team in order to put these photographs together and reconstruct the Colosseum in 3D. And I've done that with other buildings too, and in principle that can be done with any place of the world that people visit and take photos of. You know, you don't even have to go there. You can do this from your desk and reconstruct the world in 3D, just a piece of software is needed for this, right? And so the hope is actually that we would be able to distribute the use of the NervousNet app in a similar way as OpenStreetMap has distributed all over the world. And they now have 1.5 million volunteers feeding in data into the system all the time and making sure that OpenStreetMap is the most up-to-date map of the world, in particular in disaster situations, a subject I'll address in a minute. So obviously having all this information is very useful to get a better awareness of our options, of the implications of our decisions, and to reach more effective actions. Now, in many cases, we don't know enough about the alternatives that we have, and having this knowledge is very important for more responsible behavior. So, this is the purpose: create awareness of our situation, to be able to take more conscious decisions, better decisions, and to create compasses for decision makers that would not just depict the gross national product per capita, but also health, environment, and social capital, which is actually important for the generation of economic well-being too, such as reputation, trust, solidarity, compliance, and so on, or also happiness. I mean, all of these things matter. And of course, people have noticed that these kind of possibilities are very important, in particular to respond to crisis. Just to mention the Crisis member community that has done really a phenomenal job in responding to a difficult situation and providing information not only to first aid and crisis response teams, but also to everyone else, based on activities of the citizens and of everyone else. So, but apart from just mapping what's happening, what's the situation out there in the world, the question is, can we even respond more efficiently, and what would we need for this? And I've had an interesting hackathon in San Francisco some time ago at SwissNex, and together with some colleagues we managed to attract 90 computer scientists or coders from all sorts of areas. And this idea that there would be a big earthquake soon in the future is of course thrilling everyone in the Bay Area, and the question is, how could one respond to that kind of situation? So 90 people turned up and created 9 groups working for one day on a number of solutions, and these are the 3 winners of the competition. So first of all, Amigo Cloud came up with an app that was allowing you basically to take pictures of a collapsed bridge, a road that was damaged, a building that looked unstable or whatsoever. So you could document that, you could annotate this, and as soon as your smartphone had connectivity, this information would be sent to the internet and shared with others, and not only the crisis response team would learn about all this, but also the neighborhood. And everyone would be informed much better in a shorter time. Of course, however, communication is important during these disasters, and in many cases the communication network breaks down. And therefore, it's important to have an ad hoc network to allow you still to communicate in these kind of crisis situations from phone to phone without the need of a centralized infrastructure. And that would work for some time until your battery is empty. But that's where actually Charge Beacon comes in. So they proposed to put solar panels in the neighborhood and allow people to charge their smartphones over there. Besides, it has a positive social effect because people would meet there, talk about the situation, figure out solutions together, and all these kind of things. Then, okay, what can you do? Here is what Helping Hands was proposing, they developed another smartphone app, and that allowed people to say, I need help, you know, I need some water, or I need some food for my 3-year-old child, or I need somebody who could look after my grandfather, or I need some warm clothes, or whatsoever. And people in the neighborhood could then say, hey, I have something I can provide to you. I can help, actually. I can give this, or I can do that. And particularly in disaster situations, people have this desire to help, you know. They cannot just sit at home and watch TV all the time. No, they want to help. And these are the tools that are enabling them to do this. So basically what we're seeing is a paradigm shift in disaster response towards more bottom-up participation. You know, classically, this was organized in an almost military fashion, in a top-down way. So you try to gather information on the bottom that flows up, you know, eventually reaches the disaster response room, and their decisions are taken, hopefully the best ones, and then the benevolent dictator says what everyone has to do, and that percolates down and so on. And it takes time, actually, to get this information, to evaluate it, to instruct people, and in many cases, there are interruptions of the communication routes. Some information is missing, or there's too much information at the same time, you cannot process it, or it's contradictory, and all these kind of problems, and that creates delays and all sorts of other troubles. So it seems that this might work much better, where basically there is a combination of top-down and bottom-up, so there is a collection of what needs to be done. This information would find together on these information platforms, and then people could sign in and say, okay, I can do this, I'm going to commit myself to this task, and so on. And that's actually good for all levels, because it's helping people. If they can help themselves and each other, you know, they can respond much more quickly. The disaster response team would often need up to 72 hours to be fully operational. So this is freeing up resources on the top. They can really focus on the places where the disaster struck hardest, and they can be more strategic because they don't have to pay attention to all the little things that people can fix themselves. Now this is interesting, particularly because many problems today are of a similar nature. In politics, in business, you often have to respond to new situations quickly. You know, you have to find a solution, and it's a little bit like disaster response today. So I expect that this paradigm will also become much more important in the future in politics and in business. And altogether what we see is that as the complexity of systems goes up, we need some degree of autonomy in order to achieve our goals well. And that has to do actually with the following graph. So what we're seeing is that processing power is increasing quickly according to Moore's law. It's doubling every 18 months or so. And data volumes, on the other hand, is also exponentially increasing, but it's doubling every 12 months. And that's interesting because it's not only allowing us to take evidence-based decisions using big data, but what we see here is that there's a gap opening up between data volume and processing power. So more and more data will never be processed because there's not enough processing power. Actually, the gap is opening up over time. So the problem of dark data is becoming an issue, and you really need to know what to pay attention to. So there's a flashlight effect, as I sometimes call it. Moreover, look at the red curve, which represents systemic complexity. Now we can network everything with each other. You know, take two objects, network them. This creates a third object. Then you can take these three objects and combine them in different ways to create 6 objects. And now there is a combinatorial possibility of connecting different objects with each other, and you get a factorial explosion of possibilities. And even though, of course, we don't realize all of them, we still have this explosive increase in systemic complexity, and it even overtakes data volume. So it's obvious that we would lose top-down control. Of course, complexity is exploding, and even data volumes are bigger than what we can process. Fortunately, however, there is another control paradigm, which is distributed control, and if that is done in a smart way, then it's going to produce a self-organization of the system that creates you the properties, the functionality that you like. And so this is where complexity and global system science come in and can deliver new insights and new solutions. And altogether, let me give an example that demonstrates that we need more wisdom rather than more power. I mean, often if something doesn't work, we think, okay, we have to try harder, we have to invest more, we have to use more PS, more voltage, whatever, more financial input. We need to force the system more to behave as it should. But we know very well our body is a complex system, and if we use more medicine, it would not be better for our body, it would be just poisonous, right? So we really need to learn to be minimally invasive in order to be successful in a complex system. Take this example over here. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be difficult to drive in a circle, but we will see that after some time, this fluid flow breaks down and causes phantom traffic jam. So now we have this phantom traffic jam, and actually it's going to stay here for forever almost. So the question is, could we predict this to happen if we knew every single thought and emotion of people, if you would really be able to surveil them in every single detail what they do and to learn about their personality and so on? And the answer is no. This wouldn't allow us to predict when this is going to happen and who is going to cause it. Because, why can I say this? Because we have a mathematical theory allowing us to understand this phenomenon, and there is no psychology, no knowledge about ideas and emotions of people in it at all. And this theory tells us that whenever the density goes beyond a certain threshold, and that means the distances between cars fall below a certain physical value, then the smallest variations in speed would be amplified. Because the next car has to respond, but it responds with some delay, and to compensate for that delay, it has to tip the brake a little bit harder, the next one even harder, and so on. So it creates a cascade effect, and in the end, every car is stopped, although no driver wants to do this. So not even having modern technology and modern cars, a lot of information, you can see everything over here. The best intentions to avoid this would help you to avoid an outcome that you don't want to have, because this system is unstable. And in fact, it turns out that the big unsolved problems of the world result from systemic instabilities. This applies to unstable supply chains. The beer game is a good example to demonstrate even to experienced managers that it's difficult to control supply chain, and most likely it's going to fail if, small variations can amplify, as we've seen that in the stop-and-go traffic before. The same applies to the entire economy. Recessions are basically a stop-and-go phenomenon in our world economy. Now let's take pedestrian crowds. In most situations, they would nicely self-organize themselves into efficient flows. But again, if the density is too high, terrible things might happen. Crowd disasters where people die, although nobody wants this to happen. How is it possible that people die if nobody wants this. But this is again an uncontrollable situation called crowd turbulence, and even hundreds of policemen or soldiers cannot stop this crowd disaster if you operate your system at a density that is just unstable. Same thing with crime, there is also apparently some instability in the social system, or tragedies of the commons. So here, cooperation of everyone would be good for everyone. But like the free traffic flow we've seen before, cooperation is unstable, and that's why it erodes, and you get into a situation that we call tragedy of the commons, where everyone is in a bad situation. And conflict, of course, are also a phenomenon where there is a social instability. In fact, it often happens in multicultural settings where people apply a mechanism that works in a monocultural setting, which is punishment. And so basically, if somebody doesn't comply with norms, we often sanction other people for this, and that helps to stabilize norms. Now, if you do that in a multicultural setting, this other person says, but I didn't do anything wrong according to my own culture. How do you dare punishing me? And then you punish back to say, don't do this again because it hurts you if you hurt me. And as a result, you get an escalation. And that ends up in conflict, as we can see that in the Middle East and many other places of the world. So what works well in a multicultural, monocultural context is absolutely unsuited, perhaps, in a multicultural one. We need to apply different kinds of mechanisms. Now, also, revolutions are a phenomenon of instability. And many of these phenomena are so little controllable because of these cascade effects that happen in them if there's this instability. So even a local perturbation can mess up the entire system. And even though this seems to be just a funny experiment for a rainy weekend, unfortunately these things happen in reality too, and hopefully they're not experiments. So, for example, this blackout of the European power grid, which started over here in northern Germany, but had impacts all over Europe, thousands of kilometers away, How could that happen? Or look at this, bankruptcies of banks in the aftermath of the bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers. So there are hundreds of banks that fail and causes costs of hundreds of billions of dollars because of these cascade effects. And why? Because these systems are wrongly designed, operated in the wrong parameter range, and so they are not controllable. It's a design issue, and so here's why complexity science is so important, because it can inform us about proper design of complex systems. And I personally believe that we can learn how to let socioeconomic systems work for us. The success of physics has been based on learning about the laws of nature and learning how to use them for us by engineering. And I personally am convinced, because I've been working on theories about social behavior for a long time, that we can find mathematical laws that allow us to understand all these problems that I mentioned before. And so we can use these forces that are naturally created by the system for us in a similar way as in the example before, explosions were actually used in a way that would trigger a directed motion, an ordered behavior of the system, a desired behavior of the system, right? But we need to understand enough about social systems. Okay, now some examples showing how we can actually overcome some of the problems. I'm not going to play this to the end because I've shown this in my first presentation today, but the essence is that we can make real-time measurement of the distances between vehicles with radar sensors. We can use this information to feed it back in real time and let cars drive in a slightly different way by the use of driver assistance systems. And it can be done in a way that it's not only improving the comfort of driving, but also creating collective benefits, such as a stable traffic flow and a higher capacity. And interestingly enough, this works even if not every car is equipped with this technology, and even though this is based on a distributed mechanism. So there is no centralized control here. So, as you see, in the meantime, we got rid of the traffic jam, even though the inflow stayed the same, because we have turned on this traffic assistance system. Now, we have done a similar thing for urban traffic flow. We've compared top-down control as we have it today with a traffic center with a bottom-up control where basically each intersection separately minimizes the travel times of those cars approaching it. We call it the Homo economicus approach because everyone does the best thing from their own perspective. Now, there's a third approach which does the same, that means tries to minimize travel times, but interrupts this principle sometimes to clear long queues. And so you would think, okay, that should certainly be not as good as this one, which strictly optimizes, right? So let's see what happens. Top-down control, as the capacity of the intersection is used more, shows an increasing queue length of vehicles, almost linearly increasing, and it looks like a pretty reasonable behavior. However, the selfish optimization based on the principle of the Homo economicus, each intersection optimizes separately, is much better, produces much shorter queue lengths, and we can say, well, Adam Smith's invisible hand seems to work quite well. Up to this point over here, until the queue length explodes, and actually the traffic center says, haha, this is why you need us. Of course, Adam Smith's invisible hand fails over here at high capacity utilizations. Now, interestingly enough, the third approach adds other regarding, because it's trying to avoid spillover effects. This is doing well all over the way. So it's possible to have a local control that's superior to top-down control if you have an NP-hard optimization problem and a system that's complex and varying so much that it cannot be optimized in real time. Then local flexible response can be superior. And we can make the invisible hand work by using new kind of technology and control approaches. This is the interesting point. And it has dramatic benefits actually for our cities, because we can reduce the travel times of public transport or motorized traffic, pedestrian cyclists, and it's good for nature too, for our environment. Now, similar principles can be applied actually in industry. We are talking about Industry 4.0 over here, and the idea was that basically the products that are being produced could be talking to other products and to the machines producing them, and basically we could create a self-organizing production system over here. You could even change the layout of the factory and would kind of reorganize itself, and there are many interesting things one can do. And depending actually on the load of the system, it could organize in different ways. So you can see in the beginning, basically everyone takes a direct way, and later on you see a circular service because that's superior. So there's a collective motion actually that's finally organizing here by itself. So suitable interaction mechanism can enable the self-organization in technological systems, but I think we can use that for the economy and society too. And this idea is pretty old, so old that the slide is broken somehow. So I should show the fable of bees, 300 years old. Of course, we know more Adam Smith with this idea of the invisible hand, but we also know that there are these tragedies of the commons that show that the invisible hand doesn't always work, and environmental pollution is just one example. So the question is, can we build assistance systems not just for traffic and for production, but also for social cooperation? And the answer is yes, we can. In fact, Elinor Ostrom, the Nobel Prize winner in economics, has shown it. She's done empirical studies confirming that self-governance can be efficient given proper design principles. And one modern version of such design principles are reputation systems, which are found to be positive both for sellers and for buyers. And they're increasing the quality of the service and the products. And so I'd like to claim that 300 years after its invention, the invisible hand can be made to work using new technology, in particular the Internet of Things, when we combine these measurements with complexity science. And so the art is to find the right kind of feedback loops to enable the self-organization you'd like to have. And for this, you need to have a multidimensional incentive and value exchange systems. A system that I sometimes call multidimensional finance, which I believe will be superior to the finance system we have, and probably much more resilient. But anyway, in a diverse world, one major principle is that we need to create interoperability. And actually measuring externalities and applying this multidimensional incentive system is one way to make systems interoperable. Now today we are seeing that there are digital assistants coming up that help us to be interoperable with other cultures. Let's take languages. Yeah? There are apps that allow me to talk to my smartphone in one language and will come out at your smartphone in another language. So this helps us to overcome intercultural barriers. But we can actually do more than this, because cultures are collections of success principles. And many of these success principles, however, we don't know explicitly. You know, it's implicit knowledge that we learn by copying other people's behaviors. But there's a lot of value in this knowledge if we would just make it explicit. Because then we could combine these success principles of different cultures with each other to create new value and better systems. This is where new economic activity will take place. And I'm eventually heading towards my end by coming to one assistance system that I've been working on, which helps basically to avoid lose-lose situations, to improve win-win situations, and to turn win-lose situations in win-win situations. And there are actually 4 different kinds of digital assistants that would help us. A system that I call social mirror that would support situational awareness, a social adapter that would help basically to engage in profitable interactions and point us to opportunities that we would otherwise overlook. And then social protector would help us to avoid lossful interactions, and finally social money would help us to support value transfer and incentivize favorable interactions. Now finally, I think we need to engage in creating collective intelligence, and I think we will basically create, or are already creating, a network of intelligences, both human and artificial, and what counts as a network of ideas, and that we make sure that good ideas spread and the malicious ideas would not spread so much. And so the art is to create information systems that would allow us to efficiently bring the best ideas of many minds together. And we can learn something very interesting here from the Netflix challenge, which showed that actually not the best wins, but it's diversity that wins, the combination of diverse ideas. In order to make this a foundation of our future governance systems, we need to learn how to bring the best ideas together. And I think argument maps would be one aspect of that, which would allow people to engage in finding solutions to complex problems, and would be an instrument to channel those ideas that people have and bundle them into a number of different perspectives. And once this has been boiled down to anything between, say, 2 and 7 or so perspectives, politicians or decision makers that have been elected or also managers in a company would call these people together at a round table, and there would be a process of deliberation in order to integrate ideas and find solutions and to satisfy several of these perspectives. And then in this way, we would boil it down to 2 or 3 very good solutions, and then different cities or regions would try them out, and other cities would copy them later on as they turn out to be successful. Now, the entire economy actually is going to change because the digital revolution is going to wash away many classical jobs in industry, yellow in services, the blue line is agriculture, so we're entering the 4th economy, and that will be characterized by information and knowledge production, big data, of course, and the use of all this data to turn it into value. That's why people say data is the new oil. Bitcoin is the best example that you now can really do things that people believe were impossible, turn nothing into value, or to turn bits into gold. In fact, Bitcoins were sometimes more valuable than gold. Now, on another strand of application, the Internet of Things is enabling Industry 4.0, distributed systems, smart grids, smart cities, and we're going to see also personalized medicine. We're going to see, in fact, not only preventive approaches towards improving our health, we will altogether see more creative work and more personalization. And this is also because now it doesn't make so much difference anymore to create one copy of a product, or 10 or 1,000 or 1,000,000, because we are entering this zero marginal cost society due to new kinds of technologies, such as 3D printers. And what will be important is actually co-creation in future, so consumers will not just be consuming passively and spend their money, but they would be part of the value creation process actually. So network thinking becomes more and more important, and we see that probably also reflected very visibly in the sharing economy that's now emerging. And this is very interesting because it seems to be a side product actually of the economic crisis that we're in. So people were trying to keep up a high standard of living by sharing. And in fact, we're living on a planet where the population is still growing, but material resources are limited. So the only way to increase our standard of living further, given the limited resources, is that we would share these objects, these products with each other. Like cars and drilling machines and everything else, because it doesn't make sense to park them in the garage and don't use them. Okay, so information obviously will become more and more important, and the leading countries in the world will be those that really understand what are the special properties of information, how to use them best. And information is very different from gold. which we would put in a treasury, you know, don't leave it out, protect it from others. No, actually, information is a perishable good. And information can be shared as often as we like. It's an immaterial good, and that has some benefits because we don't have to take it away from others if we want to have more of it. It's a zero-sum game, and we can actually create benefits for everyone without having to exploit anybody. You know, to demonstrate this here, I'm showing this rabbit over here because we know that, you know, rabbits are multiplying, and of course it doesn't happen by itself. So assume you're a company, and the company corresponds to a rabbit. You cannot do this multiplication by yourself. It requires social interaction, you know. And you know, the more you interact socially, the more it creates, you know, and that is actually creating a new paradigm of exponential innovation. Classically, we have linear innovation. You know, every 2 years, a car company produces a new kind of car, and again, 2 years later, a new car, and so on. This is linear innovation. But what we need in order to have all the jobs that are needed in the future is exponential innovation, and that's being created by creating an ecosystem, an information, innovation, and production ecosystem with interoperability. So there are a number of things that we can do in order to head towards such a system. And now summarizing by saying some of the core principles of the economy 4.0 and the smart digital society are the creation of a planetary nervous system, the consideration of externalities, multidimensional feedbacks, digital assistance, and collective intelligence. And the interesting thing is, all of this can be done in a distributed way. That means with democratic technology rather than a technocratic or totalitarian approach. So I also think that those countries that are implementing these new principles first will be leading, because it's going to mobilize the capacity of the entire population, and this is important. So let's do this together. Thank you very much.